Good morning, welcome. This is the Church of Truth this morning, this Sunday morning. So this is, there are many ways to worship. There are many ways to honor humanity, honor God. This is one way to do it. So you should be commended to get up early here Sunday morning. You are in for a rare treat today, folks. I think one of the things the conference really spells out is what our youth are doing today. And as we know, they are our hope. We have to pass the torch, if you excuse the expression, to our young people today. They're the ones that need to keep this going. And of course, we need to thank our forefathers in the truth movement, our foremothers in the truth movement who have got us to this point. Without them, there's a good chance we wouldn't even be allowed to meet here at UT today to have the discussion that you're going to hear all day today. So let's honor the people that got us here. Let's honor the people that are going to take us home. One of the people that I speak of, the Generation X as they're called, sometimes Generation Y or Z. Myself am from the Sonic Boomer generation. I'm not a baby boomer and I'm not a Generation X. One of these people is Daniel Abramson of False Flag News. Daniel really gives me hope that we're going to win this thing. He is just an exhaustive, comprehensive researcher. He works extremely hard. He goes to college. He lives his life. He's a musician and an artist, a researcher, runs a website, does a radio program on the one and only GCN radio network Monday nights at 7 o'clock here Central Time. He's a freelance journalist, researcher, musician, college student, GCN radio host. He's the creator of falseflagnews.com, a multifaceted website addressing issues related to false flag terrorism and the New World Order in general. I am constantly blown away. Just when you think you've heard it all, you've read it all, you listen to Daniel Abramson, and you'll know there is something to learn. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend, my colleague, your speaker this morning, Daniel Abramson. Put it together.
Thank you for the warm introduction. Let's see if we can get this going here. You think we can get the screen going here, guys? Should I just touch this? All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning. It was difficult for me to wake up as well, so I definitely appreciate it, and I appreciate the remarks, Jack. Thank you very much. All right, I would speak more. I want to give you an introduction story. I wish I had time to flesh things out more, but there's just too much to talk about right now. Do we have good microphone levels? I think we're going to have to take this cell phone now, which is, sorry, brother. All right. Off to a less than auspicious start, but I just want to start right now by talking about what I see as the global breakdown. I think a lot of the time what we've done as a movement is we talk about September 11th. What happened? Well, there was a controlled demolition. People talk about the Pentagon. People talk about the hijackers training at U.S. Air Force bases. People talk about the insider stock trades. People talk about the thousands of different points that when we look at it suggest not only what the government is telling us is a complete lie, but that what actually appears to be happening is a pattern of terrorism created by government agencies to mind control you, to really mind control the world, to make you think that there is a threat of the other, and that if we don't fight this threat, if we don't invade, if we don't create a police state, if we don't take over the world's oil, we will all perish. So I think we've done a good job in fleshing out the research points of how 9/11 happened, but I think we need to look a little bit more into why it happens and really where we're going from here. Constantly we're saying there's a threat of another terror attack. They might hit us again. That Cheney and his faction are talking about nuclear war against Iran. Well, why are they doing that? What would cause these men who basically have the golden goose right now? You know, one of the most profound questions I'm asked by people who are not into this stuff, they say, well, if the elite really have it like this, if there really is a Bilderberg group, if there really is a CFR, if they really have complete command and control over the system, why blow it up? Why kill the golden goose? I mean, they have it on lockdown right now. What would compel these men to risk basically nuclear annihilation? And that's why I'm saying false flag terrorism, my thesis is that it emerges out of desperation. This is not a show of strength. This is a show of a U.S. empire on the brink of collapse, a U.S. economy that is collapsing, and the twilight of U.S. hegemony, the twilight of British hegemony, the breakdown of the Anglo-American finance system that has run the world for hundreds of years. The Federal Reserve is in big trouble. The Bank of England is in big trouble. The derivatives are in big trouble. And our military is in enormous trouble. So I'm going to hope to flesh these topics out today. Now, the big question is not how does false flag terrorism happen? We've done a great job with that. I'm not saying stop the research. I'm saying why does it happen? Well, in the specific case of 9/11, here are just some of the reasons I'm going to flesh out today. I believe there's a stalled agenda. They have not done very well with the Free Trade of the Americas Agreement. They are not doing a tremendous job in implementing CAFTA. They wanted to have the New World Order, the global government, by the year 2000. They're behind schedule. There's an economic crisis right now with a dollar that is in collapse, so bad that the government's trying to prop it up. And of course, we're seeing NATO weakness with the emergence of Russia and China as dominant players in the world scene, world's energy scene, world's currency scene, and certainly the military and space weaponry scene. Just to flesh through a couple more things, and I promise I will flesh them out fully. They wanted the Middle Eastern and Central Asian hydrocarbons. That means liquefied natural gas and oil. It's true, this is a war for oil. It's not because of peak oil, but this is a war for oil and natural gas. This is also a war for Israel. And it is not anti-Semitic to talk about this. And we better start standing up to the intimidation of groups like the ADL that make us say when we talk about the fact that Israel is directing large parts of American foreign policy, that that is somehow anti-Semitic. That's anti-Jewish to talk about it. That is a lie, and that is a manipulation technique to not talk about who is really influencing our policy, which is a lot of members of the Likud party in Israel. It's also a breakdown of the Federal Reserve and the debt-industrial complex that ties into the dollar breakdown and the death of the petrodollar, which I'm going to flesh out. They're trying to push a North American Union. They're calling it the Security and Prosperity Agreement. Going to make you secure, free, and prosperous. And they use this Orwellian language to push basically the dissolution of the United States, the breakdown of our borders, drugs moving through, human traffic moving through, guns moving through. And look, I'm a Second Amendment person, but I think that we don't want, the possibility of a real nuclear weapon moving in. What if there is a real organic terrorist group? Not having border security just means that there's going to be more drug flow and more human trafficking. Some of that goes into the sex slavery of DynCorp, which I'm going to talk about. Spike in government drug dealing, the police state and the prison industrial complex. When you talk about drugs, they play both ends. They'll ship the drugs in and then have a whack-and-hut prison make you work for 70 cents an hour. And this is a war being waged on the working class through the drug war. And most importantly, it's an endgame against Russia and China. I think we all better start to see that 9/11 is the beginning, not of a Middle Eastern war, although it is, but really an endgame against Russia and China. And we better start seeing that complex coming up. It is World War III coming together. I'm going to show you how the chess pieces are coming together. How those chess pieces are going to play out, new technology. You want to know who's behind 9/11? I'm going to show you the factions. And a lot of them are related to the space war faction in this country and those who are manipulating the genetic engineering, nanotechnology, robotics, artificial intelligence, cognitive science, and merging these together to create what they call the hive mind system. Their words, not mine. Hive mind system, brain implant in your head. This is not conspiracy. I have the documents, National Science Foundation, where they talk about it. And of course, I don't want to just give you fear. This movement has enough fear to last us 1,000 years. Fear-mongering is a dime a dozen in this movement. I'm going to try to offer you solutions because I don't want to just tell you we're screwed. What good am I at that point? We might as well just give up, right? So I'm going to try to give you some good solutions. Let's get right into it. I'm going to need to take a couple drinks of water. It happens, so you're going to have to forgive me. Look, I just want to talk about the present situation right now. I'm going to get into all this, I promise, but I want to just talk about where we are right now. We often talk about Iraq and we say, well, Iraq is a disaster. They really bungled it. But I think we should just flesh out where we are with Iraq and how it relates to Iran. What's amazing to me is that the vast majority of Americans have now turned against the war in Iraq. Now, I don't necessarily think this means most Americans are anti-war. They're anti-losing. That's a point Scott Ritter makes. They're not against the slaughter of at least 700,000 people. The Lancet said it was 650,000. That was almost a year ago. The British number said about 600,000. And of course, that does not count the depleted uranium, which is creating a new radioactive Hiroshima in that country with a half-life of billions of years. The increase in cancer and leukemia that will come far after, or if our forces ever leave, who knows. I mean, maybe that whole region will just get wiped out. And the soldiers come back with that. But I think the American people are against losing. I think if we were winning this war, they would say, rah, rah, support the genocide, in the same way so many people said, shock and awe. Let's shock and awe these Arabs. So I don't think it's a moral compunction, but I think it is interesting. People have turned against it. Now, what's happening right now? They're building 13 permanent military bases for the global war on terror, the long war. It's the long war. Well, what are they doing? These are going to be used as launch pads into Syria, into Lebanon, into Iran, into Algeria, Ethiopia, Somalia, Turkey, wherever they need to go next. The neocons have a list of 180 countries. They're thinking about all of them. We talk a lot about Iran. You know what interests them? Kazakhstan. I'm going to talk about that. Another thing, the Iraq surge. They said it's going to be a surge, 20,000 troops. It's actually been 48 to 50,000. Mainstream. And they're going to be there for years. Now they're saying, well, we said that we were going to let them go in the summer, and now General Casey is saying we're actually going to need them past the summer. And we actually might put 13,000 more in there. So the surge is around 50,000. Don't be deceived by their numbers. The numbers always lie, and it's usually a lot worse than even they show, and it's bad enough, you know. The Iraqi exports for oil have been completely shut down. And that's artificial scarcity to spike oil prices. They want $100 a barrel oil. I'm going to flesh that out. They are balkanizing the region now via an engineered civil war, and Jack Blood talked about this point. P2OG. If we haven't looked into this, we need to look into a program. P2OG. I encourage everyone out there, the people who are going to watch this on YouTube, who think 9/11 conspiracies are a joke, I implore you, P2OG, where the government says we want to stimulate reactions in the Muslim world, create false flag terror attacks. They don't say false flag, but they say we want to create real terrorism, have real terrorist groups respond to it. They are trying to create a balkanized region in Iraq by having wars between Sunni, Shia, and Kurds, and some of the minority religions there, the Mandeans, etc. So there's that incident with the British SAS. They dressed up as a bunch of Arab bombers and tried to bomb a mosque. And then they got broken out of prison after that. Not a lot of press on it, but it did happen. I mean, you can find reports on this if you go on Google. And so we talk about, well, the Shias and Sunnis have been at war forever. This is just really a civil war between them. This has been an engineered civil war. And they want to partition Iraq into 3 parts. Now, you say, was this always the plan? I thought they're partitioning it into 3 parts because it's not going well. Because they bungled it, right? Well, we get into the map, and Tarpley touched on this a little bit yesterday. This is Bernard Lewis, who is sort of one of these neocon masterminds. And he says the goal is to divide, conquer, and redraw. And they're breaking, as you can see, if we can bring it up there, Iraq into 3 parts, breaking Iran into different parts, having an expanded Syria, or breaking Syria up a little bit, having an expanded Jordan. They're talking about breaking up Afghanistan a little bit with the Pashtunistan. They're saying they're going to break up Pakistan and have a Baluchi region as well. Well, how do you do this? Gets to another map here. This is another neocon architect, a man named Ralph Peters. And he says the secret to history, history's dirty little secret, is ethnic cleansing works. Those are his words. Ethnic cleansing works. Openly declaring, and when you look at his map, you see a Sunni Iraq, an Arab Shia state, and a free Kurdistan, which they're going to chop off of Turkey there. This is their plan. It has always been their plan. This is not a result of the Civil War. This is why the Civil War happens. They want sectarian violence so that Sunnis and Shias do not unite against the evil occupying force which are murdering men, women, and children. This is a criminal occupation. I mean, we support the troops, I guess, in that we don't want them to die. I do not support this war. I mean, I don't even think we can comprehend how many people have died there or what 700,000 lives mean. It's a statistic. I can't wrap my mind around it. I don't think any of us can. We cry at the tragedy of one person. I mean, the kind of slaughter that has been done to these people because they sit on oil resources is just beyond comprehension. And this is the plan right now, balkanize. So there's a problem, though. The Civil War has gotten out of control. They don't have total control. They thought we can engineer this civil war and these Arabs will be at each other's throats. Well, now they don't know which side to play. They armed the Shiites with the Salvador option. And now Cheney's saying, wait a minute, maybe we made a mistake. Now we're going to arm the Sunni, or the Sunnis, right? And now they're going with a Saudi Arabian coalition, arming rebel groups in Lebanon. And they're saying, this is going to be our way to do it now. We're going to arm Sunnis in Syria as well. The problem is by doing this, by playing both sides, it even exacerbates it, and I think it's out of control for them. I don't think that these guys are masterminds. I think the neocons are bunglers. I think disbanding the Iraqi army by the CPA, Paul Bremer, was a disastrous mistake, let's be honest. You put 200, 300,000 guys who are now unemployed, going to be walking the streets of Iraq. There is your resistance. I mean, you want to know who the resistance is coming from. It's mostly Sunni, and that's because the CPA disbanded the army. So I don't think these guys are masterminds. They're incompetent. They're evil. They'll take their means to any point, but I don't think they're overwhelmingly competent. The supply lines in Baghdad are being cut right now, and the surge has not cut troop deaths. I would go more into that. In Afghanistan, the Taliban resurgence cannot be stopped, and they've had NATO troops come in there. That's not working either, and many of the CIA warlords who control that country and the country's opium crops, that is to say the CIA's opium crops, are in danger of losing power right now, and Hamid Karzai has a little fiefdom in Kabul. That man is not running anything. He doesn't run Afghanistan any more than I run Austin, Texas, because I'm on a stage here, you know? And that's what it is. It's a stage. It's stage managed. The warlords control the country. Additionally, Tarpley touched on this a little the other day. Israel's been humiliated in Lebanon. People don't realize that. They used white phosphorus bombs on men, women, and children. They used cluster bombs. These things don't explode for a while, so you'll be walking down in southern Lebanon. I mean, the region is uninhabitable now. And they say, well, it was a war on Hezbollah. No. It's a war on Lebanon. It's a war on Arab independence. It's a war to destroy any country. And sometimes it's not even that the country poses a threat. It's more of a genocidal, it's a racial agenda on the part of the radical Israelis, the people in the Kadima, the Likud party, the people who believe that Arabs have no right to exist, that they are a lower form of life, that these people deserve to be killed. And, of course, what's the neocon Pentagon solution to all of this, all these military disasters? Double down. I say they're like a degenerate gambler. You've seen that in the movies where the guy just keeps losing. He says, double down, double down, double down, double down. And it's just going to, they're like degenerate gamblers who can't get away from the casino table. So what do? Iraq surge, jump into Iran. And if you don't think that those troops are being put there near the border for Iran, I got another thing coming for you. Some of them are being put in Baghdad. Not all of them. A lot of them are going to the border. This is the preparation for ground forces to occupy Iran. I mean, they don't really think that they can invade, but they think maybe after we bomb it, we can occupy the oil regions in Khuzestan. So my thesis right now, people say, are we going to have war with Iran? I mean, I walk around and I say to people, do you think we're going to have war with Iran? I'm interested. What do you think? Well, I'm not even doing justice to myself. We're at war with Iran right now. Colonel Sam Gardner, who is a top Air Force colonel, went on CNN and said there have been operations by intelligence agencies inside Iran since 2006. No joke. Seymour Hersh at the New Yorker magazine says the CIA, Pentagon, Mossad, and MI6 are funding and training terrorist campaigns. Now, who are these terrorists who are running around? This is the Mujahideen et Khalq, who are on the State Department's terror watch list, are at the western Iraqi border. They have Kurdish PKK and Kurdistan Free Life Party in southern Turkey and northern Iraq. Their presence is growing so fast that the Turks are now shelling northern Iraq. If you go on Google and type in Turks shell northern Iraq, that's how bad the problem is getting. Even Turkey feels threatened by how much of growth there has been in the PKK. They're training Baluchi tribesmen from East Pakistan. Now, you remember that map I showed you and you saw free Baluchistan? That's the deal that's being cut. They say, you help us take over Iran, and we'll slice you off a little piece of Pakistan. How does that sound? Divide, conquer, balkanize. And this is how they do it. They're bribing people off. They have Azeri rebels in the north of Iran who are being bribed off. And, of course, the biggest population that's being bribed off is the Arab population in Khuzestan. Well, what's Khuzestan, or the Arabistan province? Well, that's where the minority Arab population is in Iran. It's also where 90% of the oil wealth is located. 90% of the oil fields are in a small southwestern portion of Iran known as Khuzestan, right on the Persian Gulf right there. And this is where all the oil fields are. So they need to rile these people up. It's very convenient for the neocons. There is a large minority Arab population there. And there's been a number of bus and bombings and pipeline bombings. I'm going to talk about that. So it's not just the brink of this sort of covert war. Because this is more like Iran-Contra, right, where we have the Contras running through and murdering men, women, and children. We're on the brink of a nuclear war. Now, one of the things that bothers me is I have to, I spend all my day researching, and I have to go online and see them saying, 2 carrier groups in the Gulf. There's 2 carrier groups in the Gulf. Now, see, the numbers lie. They'll tell you a little bit of the truth. It's always worse, almost always. It's 5 carrier groups. Go online and research this. I encourage everyone out there. I mean, maybe my information's wrong. It's not, but go on their own websites. I mean, I encourage you. Go on the Nimitz website, but the ones they're not talking about are the Boxer and the Baton Strike groups. Go on their own website. In fact, if you go on the USS Boxer's website as of like a day ago, picture from just a few days ago. We're in the Persian Gulf. They got the soldiers. They're doing things. They're on the submarines. It's great, you know. But the media doesn't cover it. But their own website does. So what's going on? We have the USS Nimitz, USS Stennis, the Boxer, the Baton Strike Group, and a French carrier group. That's 5 by my numbers, although there's never much one for math. They have hundreds of attack planes and helicopters, missiles, submarines, minesweepers. And the attack, according to Colonel Gardner, is going to be launched from Bulgaria and Romania, where the B-2 bombers will refuel and drop their nuclear munitions. Now, when are the troops arriving? Well, I just go online and look at their own websites, and they're coming in May, early June. So when's the attack coming? Well, Colonel Gardner says in the last days before the attacks, the troops will arrive in Bulgaria. Okay, so let's look to May, June. Now look, if it doesn't happen, don't come to me and say, you said it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. But, I mean, yeah, we're living at the brink of the apocalypse right now. I mean, we are surfing the edge of the apocalypse, so this is no joke. I take him dead serious. Colonel Gardner represents a faction within the military that doesn't want this to happen. He's trying to warn us. We better take him real seriously. There's possible flyovers from the United Arab Emirates and Qatar. These are 2 countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council that are being bribed off by Israel and the U.S. They're also going to use the Diego Garcia base in the Indian Ocean, where they're going to have the B-2 bombers come and drop nuclear munitions for this planned genocide against the Iranian people. 70 million of them there who are going to suffer from this because they have the unfortunate fate of sitting on mass oil and natural gas resources. They're also talking about an Israeli strike, potentially nuclear, according to Ehud Olmert, Avigdor Lieberman, the IDF, and I say retired Mossad. Yes, very retired Mossad. You know anything about the Mossad or Viktor Ostrovsky, you know nobody retires from Mossad. They're talking about 1,500 targets right now. I think I hear in the media, they say, well, we're doing 50 to 100 targets. No. It's 1,500. They're going to bomb the nuclear plants, right, and that'll create a new global Chernobyl. They're also going to bomb the chemical plants, the industrial plants. I mean, that country, when these neocons like Rush Limbaugh get up there and they say parking lot, parking lot, parking lot, yeah, they're probably going to get what they want if this plan goes through, and that's why it's imperative we stop them. A couple more things here. I said generals warning of military collapse. I touched on Colonel Gardner. How do we know about some of this stuff? There's a group within the Joint Chiefs right now that's freaking out. It's not just me. I mean, I'm no military expert. They probably know a lot more about losing wars right now, and they say our military's at the brink. Did you see Time magazine about a week ago which said our military's at the brink? We can't fight another war. There is a group that's trying to warn us. There's rebellion even within the ranks of the military. There's insurrection in the lower ranks in Iraq right now. There's rumors of mutiny, and certainly at the top ranks they can't even keep it together. Just a couple more things here. They put 16 F-16 fighters at the Incirlik base in southern Turkey. Southern Turkey, right above northern Iran. That's a sign that the invasion is coming. Another thing, they've had 4 plane crashes since 2001 with Revolutionary Guard members on board, killing hundreds of them. So everyone during the crisis was saying, Ahmadinejad, what are you doing? Show patience. You know they're trying to put the trap on you. It's true. I wish he hadn't done it, but since 2001, can you imagine if 4 U.S. military planes blew up, killing hundreds of our troops? And it's not just troops. These are top intelligence chiefs, top people within the military, top commanders being murdered, executed by having their planes blow up. And you look at the side of the planes, big circle in the plane. I mean, these things are blown out of the sky with a munition inside. So just, it's quite clear, and the Iranians are aware of this. There's been an assassination of a top Iranian nuclear scientist, abduction of top Iranian diplomats who have been tortured, by the way, waterboarded. They've had skin ripped off, had their fingernails ripped off. In fact, in the recent case with the 15 abducted UK soldiers, they released a diplomat from Iran who came back and had torture marks all over him. Very nice what's happening to top-level Iranian diplomats. Pipeline and bus bombings in Khuzestan, which I talked about. Well, you've got to get that oil, so you've got to bomb those pipelines, get the region all fired up. Iran Freedom Support Act is passed in October 2006. This begins the investigation and really cutoff of many Iranian banks. The top Iranian banks can no longer function in the international finance system. This is economic warfare against the people of Iran. So these retired generals are warning of disaster. This is General Hoare, Kern, Zinni, Odom, and many more. These are top-level people. These are top-level Marines. Zinni was a top commander in Iraq. Odom was a top NSA guy. This is the military-industrial complex saying, even we're scared about this. I mean, these people are so crazy, we think they're going to blow up the world. And what do they always say? Iraq is bad enough. Don't go into Iran. There's rumors of resignations within the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They're saying as many as 6 people could resign. That's from Robert Perry, who was a top Iran-Contra investigator and journalist. Wayne White from the State Department warns a nuclear, of course, I spelled it like Bush there, nuclear, I should have just said nuclear attack is imminent. And of course, we have the warning from Zbigniew Brzezinski, who in February says They might engineer something. They might do an attack. They might stage something on American soil and try to get this done. So what's the potential? A Gulf of Tonkin or USS Liberty. And I didn't mean to do this, but I do want to say, a lot of us never talk about the Liberty. Look into the Liberty, 1967. You begin to understand the history of Israeli false flag terrorism. I also encourage people to look up the Lavon affair and the, quote, al-Qaeda cells in Israel, which have been broken up and been found to have Mossad agents in them. So is Iran the endgame war? I would argue it is. This is not merely a continuation of policy in the Middle East. This is the beginning of a radical new break for a world war. The CIA has judged Iran to be 9 years away from the bomb, and even radical think tanks say they're 3 years away. Think about that. So there's the nuclear threat, this existential, this threat that Iran is going to get us. It's largely manufactured. Now, the IAEA says Iran's nuclear program is completely within the rules. And it's not only that, it's decrepit. It's breaking down. Their centrifuges, when they spin, they disintegrate. That Ahmadinejad, when he says, we've got these working power plants, that is largely propaganda. That is for internal consumption of the Iranian people. The propaganda source of these nuclear rumors, Iran-Syria Operations Group. This is Abram Sholsky. This is William Ludi. This is the Douglas Feith network of the Israelis who pumped this stuff out. I'm going to get into the OSP. And the same people that laid out the phony propaganda, manufactured case for war like Doug Feith, that network is now working in the ISOG, pushing the same garbage with the same journalists and the same newspapers and the same controlled corporate media telling you, be afraid, they're going to get you now. Oh, we lied to you, but we're really being serious this time, we swear. Just believe us, please. Now, what are the 3 reasons this is happening? Number 1, Israeli blackmail and threats to invade. Avigdor Lieberman came here in January and said to Bush, either you invade in the next 6 months or we will. How does that sound? I mean, the brazenness of Israel. I'm going to talk about that. Iran is switching from euros to Iranian rials they're switching from dollars to Iranian rials and euros for payment. Now, this is a big deal. This is what Saddam Hussein did before the invasion. He took the oil for food program, $10 billion, and started putting it into euros. No. You don't do that because that's a major pressure on this weakened currency. That's another reason it's happening. And Iran represents the military foothold and the diplomatic foothold and the currency foothold for Russia and China in the Middle East. Who's arming Iran right now? Russia and China. This is a backdoor into World War III or World War IV, as they call it. Israel. They're managing the clean break. This is a picture here of the Israeli Supreme Court. You see the all-seeing eye pyramid there and there. It's rife with occult symbolism. It's an amazing thing to look at. All right, so Israel, the tail wags the dog. A lot of people say, well, Israel's just a puppet state. Israel doesn't run anything. Well, I'm saying the tail sometimes wags the dog. It's not just that they are our puppet state. I think that Israel in many ways is directing American foreign policy right now. They're getting at least $3 billion a year in U.S. aid. That's guaranteed economic loans, but a lot of that is just military. It's just weapon systems that are given basically free over to the Israelis. In 1996, there was a document I'm sure some of you are familiar with called the Clean Break, which is produced by the neocon Likudnik radicals, calling for aggression against Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and expanded settlements in Gaza and the West Bank, basically saying, we're going to push the Palestinians into the river. How does that sound? Well, these are the same people who were pushing for war in Iraq, the Office of Special Plans. It's Ledeen, Pearl, Feith, Wurmser, Sholsky, Elliot Cohen, Ludi, Gingrich. These people are part of that same cabal that was putting out the Clean Break document. After 9/11, these people are heading something called the Office of Special Plans. You want to know where the propaganda came from? It was the OSP, and it was an Israeli conduit. The UK Guardian has reported in their article, The Spies Who Pushed for War, that there was a sister conduit in Sharon's war cabinet, pumping in bogus intel back and forth. The result of this is that it was going through AIPAC, the major Israeli lobby, the biggest Israeli lobby. And 2 individuals, Keith Weissman and Steve Rosen, are currently on trial under the Espionage Act for passing classified info back and forth between an individual named Larry Franklin. Who was Larry Franklin? The top Iran analyst on the OSP. So you see how this stuff begins to steamroll. This all relates back to an Israeli espionage network, which is still in the United States operating in something called MEGA back in the 1990s. It was a top spy, never identified for Israel. So let's talk about it, the incredible reach of this Israeli lobby. Well, PNAC, we talk about Project for the New American Citizen, and great job for them, but Project for the New American Century, was loaded with Israel hawks in the Israel First crowd. Feith and Dov Zakheim, Elliot Abrams. You had the influence in the war of JINSA, Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs. Who sits on their board? Cheney, Bolton, Ledeen, Feith, Pearl, Woosley. So you see a trend beginning to emerge here. JINSA was so powerful that Colin Powell recently in an interview said Don Rumsfeld, that was the JINSA crowd. The JINSA crowd. There is a vast influence of the Israeli lobbies who break themselves up to make it seem like they have diminished power. There's AIPAC, American Enterprise Institute, Washington Institute for Near East Policy, the Anti-Defamation League, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and the Hoover Institute. These are just some of them. I'm just fleshing out a few of them here. You also have the Defense Policy Board being run by Richard Pearl, a major Israel firster, a major mole for Israel. Major war planning by Paul Wolfowitz, described in Israeli papers as rabidly pro-Israel, completely pro-Israel. Dov Zakheim, who was on the PNAC documents and also the individual who helped lose $3 trillion in the Pentagon, is a dual citizen of Israel. He was also operating at Systems Planning Incorporated beforehand, running remote control flight software, but that's all I'll say about that. I don't know what that means. DHS Chairman Chertoff there for the Department of Fatherland Security is also a dual citizen of Israel. Again, you see a pattern beginning to emerge here where the head of our Homeland Security, which I'm going to talk about the espionage rings, is a dual citizen. It's very convenient. And AIPAC is forcing the Democrats to remove the Iran authorization from the latest defense bill. The Congress was saying, we want authorization before you go into Iran. We're not saying it's wrong. We're not saying we don't want to do it. But you better tell us first. We'll vote on it. That way we retain some power. AIPAC came in and told Pelosi, we give you the instructions, pull this out. It's gone. Pass the bill, no rider for Iran. Israeli espionage in the U.S. It's okay to talk about this. Don't worry, it's okay. This is not anti-Semitic. It's okay. This is real. This is factual. This is AP. This is history. The art student spy ring was operating in 2000, 2001, probably before then, where hundreds of Israelis were arrested, interrogated, and deported by the DEA. Go and Google it. You think I'm some liar? Go Google it for yourselves. You'll find it. AP, New York Times, all over the place. Although the New York Times didn't cover it as much as they would have. Kind of funny that they didn't do it, huh? They attempted to penetrate military bases, power plants, government agencies, and of course there is a link to 9/11 where Mossad operatives were videotaping the attack in New Jersey and arrested. They were part of the Urban Movers Company, which was a major front linked to the spy ring. They cleaned out their offices within days. Mossad agents had been following the hijackers around Florida, often living just a few houses away. That's from the Sunday Herald. A few houses away from the hijackers in Florida, or alleged hijackers. Were they the case officers? I don't know. What do you think? Maybe. There's also a report from Fox News that Amdocs and Converse, two Israeli companies, have backdoors that are able to tap all phone calls and a lot of internet traffic in this country. And of course, a lot of this was crushed by the influence of the ADL, which went to the major media outlets and said, you discuss this, you're finished. You hate Jews, huh? The ADL, that is a terrorist organization there, so they can put me on their list. Okay, I'm not afraid of the ADL. I'm not afraid of the Israeli lobby. I'm not afraid of these criminals, okay? And neither should you be. Nobody should be afraid. Don't let people call you an anti-Semite. You're trying to help Israel. If you're trying to stop these crimes, that's what's good for Israel. The Israeli people will be destroyed because their leaders are criminals and they're sending their country into a nuclear holocaust. That's where the real Holocaust is. All right, switching gears a little bit. I want to have continuity here, but just for the interest of time, let's talk about the currency issues here. Private debt, federal debt, and the bankrupt USA. What they call the debt industrial complex. Now, I've got a little ATM machine there. It's not one of the biometric ones, although I do have a picture. Just take a drink of water here. That was not elegant, I'm sorry. All right, so there was a bubble collapse before 9/11. Who needed a crisis? Which bankers needed a crisis? Well, folks, look at the chart here. Look at the chart. February 1995, NASDAQ's at 800. February 2000, NASDAQ at 4,700. That's in 5 years. That's what we call a bubble. That's hot money. That's the Federal Reserve pumping trillions of dollars into the system, and then it's pumped into the bubble. Who's making money off that? Well, some of the average people were. A lot of it's being made by the elite who are expanding their wealth. The wealth gap has grown during the 1990s, so you weren't really getting rich. And most people got wiped out with the internet stock swindle. September 2001, the NASDAQ's at 1,500, so they have a problem. It's been cut by more than half, almost by like 78%, I think it was. And then April 2007, now we have the NASDAQ stabilizing to 2,500. And you'd say, well, it didn't go up very much, but it's stable. So you had a complete crash. The NASDAQ was going to wipe out to way worse than 800. The bubble was bursting. And what's happened since we decoupled from the gold standard is these bubbles are created. The internet money has now gone into the real estate bubble. And now that bubble is collapsing, and bubble after bubble. And each time it gets worse. And each time they try to plug it up more and more and more. Who needed the crisis? It was the people who were manipulating the financial markets. Who else needed a crisis? Who were the chief beneficiaries? Go check a chart of Raytheon. Go check a chart of Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin, any of these war profiteers, but particularly look at Halliburton. Right before September 11th, they're about $4 a share. What are they trading at today? I want to look about $44 a share or something. Do you think they had some sort of interest in manipulating this? Who are the financial beneficiaries? Now, you could say, well, these are just abstractions, right? Because there's the Federal Reserve. And there's been great research on the Federal Reserve. We talk about the families that own it. Rothschild, Rockefeller. These people are printing our money. Well, what I've done is some research to find out which actual banks control the shares. I hope everybody goes and looks at this stuff. Look at the history of the Federal Reserve and who were the original shareholders for the about 216,000 shares that were originally put out. Those banks have changed their names over time. You know, First National Bank, First City Bank have all become these banks. And I put the Bank of England first there because when you look at the creation of the Federal Reserve, Rothschild is coordinating directly with the Bank of England. I tend to think the Bank of England may be the overlord master, and then there's a faction within them that's controlling our Federal Reserve. You know, there's layers upon layers upon layers. If they show you Rothschild, there's something above that. You know, there's always a layer removed. Some of the other banks that really, these are the people that print your money. Okay, we talk the Federal Reserve is private. These are the banks that own it. These people print your money. They probably have your money right now in your ATM card, too. Citibank, Goldman Sachs, NM Rothschild & Sons, JP Morgan Chase, that's Rockefeller and Morgan there. They merged together. The Lazards, Brown Brothers Harriman, very good people, back to Nazis, connected to Prescott Bush. Oh, the salt of the earth, really. Love them, right? Bank of New York, UBS Securities, Lehman Brothers, Deutsche Bank. They're connected to the insider stock trades, by the way. BT, Alex Brown, which merged with them. Buzzy Krongard. That's Deutsche Bank. Again, awesome guys, you know. It just makes you want to do business with them, huh? Bank of America. You know what they used to be? Bank of Italy. Israel Moses Saif and the Bank of Italy, the original shareholders in the Federal Reserve. That's now the Bank of America. We have to question how American that really is. And, of course, Morgan Stanley. So these are the banks right here. I hope everybody starts to look into this. When we talk about private Federal Reserve, it's these guys, all right? But it's bigger than the Fed. There's something called the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS. They describe themselves as the central bank of central banks. They say we coordinate policy with everybody. And next to them I have a picture for the Jesuit or Vatican Bank there. Now if you look into the P2 Freemasonic scandal in the 1980s and the Vatican Bank scandal, you also begin to see a hidden hand of the Vatican banking system. So I encourage everyone to look into the BIS and the Vatican banking system. Now I've listed some of the other members who control what I call the Euro-American Japanese, it's not very original, system of parasitic international finance. So the top three there are Japanese companies, ICBC, that's Chinese, PNB, Credit Agricole, Société Générale, Fortis, those are all French, HSBC, Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays, HBOS, those are all British. You have ING, and ABN AMRO, those are from the Netherlands. Credit Suisse, that's from Switzerland. And of course, Merrill Lynch, Wells Fargo, and the Export-Import Bank of the United States. These are the people who take that currency and manipulate it. These are the people who are controlling this parasitic system of international finance. We need to start looking into these banks. We need to start asking why they control our lives. We need to start saying, is this the real engine of this oppression? And can we identify them? I'm going to flip back here. These guys print your money. Look it up. Take this slide, look it up, follow the research. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I'm not. All right, so let's look at the euro versus the dollar since 1998. And this is an old chart, but it does not look good, at least for the dollar, unless you're holding euros right now in your pocket. I doubt you are. I bet all you have dollars in your pockets. Euros versus dollars since 1998. It's not a pretty picture. It's been a pretty straight ride upward. And in fact, the dollar just hit a 2-year low against the euro. U.S. dollar index since 2000, well, this is the other version. You watch it. It's going down. And in fact, I have a chart here, U.S. dollar index since 1983. Again, not a pretty picture, but I don't have my laser pointer. I do want to point out, yes, the dollar is crashing, right? But look here. They're holding it at a level right around 80. There's a support level. They're holding it right now. They know that the system's coming down, but they want to hold it. Yes, the dollar's coming down. Yes, since the 1980s, the value of your dollar has been chopped down. They're holding it. They're holding on for dear life. They think that they can bring it down slowly, a graduated death of the dollar. Look at gold versus the dollar, okay? Look at gold. You have gold basically trading at $253 in 1999. It's now, what, $660, $670? So you can see that the price of gold is representative of where the international bankers are putting their money. It's not into dollars, folks. They're going to let you get wiped out. They're going into gold. They're going into euros. They're going into yen and Brazilian real and UK sterling. You are supposed to get wiped out. You get your clock cleaned. They make the money by stealing your wealth. Again, nice people. What's the eventual goal? One world bank. And this has become trite almost to say. They're pushing for a one world bank. But they are. And when we look at it, here are the institutions that are doing it. World Bank, WTO. I mean, this has superseding power over the U.S. Constitution, WTO, and that's Bill Clinton. This is not a partisan thing. This is both parties working to screw you. International Monetary Fund, there you see the symbol for the Trilateral Commission. The European Union Central Bank, European Central Bank, I mean, they are forming it together there. They're a little bit ahead of the game. We're a little bit slower here. World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you know about the Bilderberg, 120 of the world's top elites, the top bloodline families, the top royals of Europe who are very close to the control levers of this system, getting together, not necessarily dictating all policy, but they're going to discuss which direction they're going to take your world in. They're not going to let you into the meeting. The UN Economic and Security Council, people don't talk, UN Economic and Social Council, I'm sorry, people don't talk about that enough, and the G8 Summit. This is another major group where the countries get together and they say, how are we going to plan this world out for people? I mean, we control the world. What are we going to do? The push right now is for a world bank. Well, how do you get a world bank? How do you do it? You need to kill the dollar. It's a control collapse. It is. I mean, I don't think anyone in the elite predicts the dollar is going to survive. It's just how long? A year, 2 years, 3, 5, 10 if we're lucky, maybe. It's coming to an end, though. The credits are about to roll, okay? So I say the dollar on the deathbed, the end of U.S. currency hegemony. I hope y'all can hear me. Am I talking too fast? All right, cool. That's good to know. All right. All right. So the dollar is still 65% of the world's currency reserves, but it's dropping. The world's major central banks are liquidating the dollar right now. The Russians are, the Chinese, the Europeans. I mean, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Middle Eastern banks are doing it. They're not going to tell you that in the Wall Street Journal. You go on the websites of these people's own countries, they'll say, oh, yeah, we're selling the dollar. Finance ministers coming out and saying, we think the dollar's finished. We do not want a part of it. You know, in March 2007, the Chinese finance minister just said, we're going to diversify into gold, into euros, into yen, into our own currency. They're scared because they see it coming down and they say, well, we don't want to hold all this worthless paper. They know it's fiat. They know it's based on nothing. It's a fictitious thing of our imagination. We all just play the game. This money is worth something. It's not. It's a joke. But because such of their biggest assets are U.S. dollars, they need to start switching that over. Now, if they do it too fast, the whole thing comes down. They lose anyway. Slowly, the Chinese think they can bring it down slowly too. The globalists, the Anglo-Americans think they can bring it down slowly. And that's why you see them working together. You see why the policy coordinates. Because on the one hand, there's this war against Russia and China, right? This confrontation that's brewing. And on the other hand, they're working together economically. Now, why? Nobody wants the dollar to collapse too fast. Let's sort of do it at the right pace, you know, medium pace, right? And just wipe you out in sort of slow torture. You know, it's like the Chinese water torture. That's what it is with this death of the dollar. The euro is up 50% since 2002. It's just a fact. Just hit a 2-year high against the dollar. Again, when we talk about U.S. as the bankrupt, doubling down gambler, that's what this whole country is. We're a drunken, degenerate gambler that decided to double down. $3 trillion missing from the Pentagon. $2.3 trillion in 1 year. It was like another trillion. Who knows how much is really missing? I mean, this is just what they found. $3 trillion. Dov Zakheim. Dov Zakheim, just a little side note I didn't put in here, he's now working at a company called Booz Allen Hamilton. B-O-O-Z Allen Hamilton. You want to understand who's got a lot of control over this shadow government right now? Just Google it. Booz Allen Hamilton. That's all I'll say. The current account deficit is over $800 billion a year. This means the U.S. needs roughly $70 billion in foreign investment per month to cover its current trade deficit. This is over $2 billion a day. It's a bankrupt. If we were a credit card consumer, they would have foreclosed on everything right now. And they are. I mean, they're buying up our assets. The Chinese have announced that they're going to take their currency and start buying up our stock market, buying up our assets. They're buying up the highways. They're buying up the rivers. They're buying up the forests and the ports. It's a fire sale. Your banks are being sold out. Your property is being sold out. Your IRA is being stolen. Your 401k is being wiped out. It's a fire sale. Welcome to their game. And they're expecting you not to notice. Just play dumb. Just be a good person. Just keep watching TV. Just take that Paxil or that Zoloft. Go back to sleep, stupid. Right? You know, the official debt of this country is supposedly $9 trillion. That's what they put. You know, when Paul O'Neill resigned, he said there's like $4 or $5 trillion off the books. That's, you know, okay. But when you look at the long-term debt, major mainstream news articles say long-term debt, 45 to 75 trillion. That's more than assets in this country. There is more long-term debt than all the wealth in the country. Okay? It's over. We've been sold out. We were sold out a long time ago. There's not a lot of coming back from this. The question is, how slow is the collapse going to happen? And if we look at the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, CAFR, we've been looted. There was actually a lot more money than they told us. That money got stolen. The government keeps two sets of books. They have the books for you, and then they have the CAFR. And so they've looted the state budgets, the local budgets, and the federal budgets with the CAFR. Look into that stuff. There was a lot more money that they stole. I mean, this is a heist on a level bank robbers couldn't dream of, you know? That's what these people are. They're the bank producers and the bank robbers at the same time. Water break. The debt house of cards is beginning to collapse. It's called the debt industrial complex. Kevin Phillips, and I know he's got a little war with Tarpley, not really, but the debt industrial complex is what he calls it, and that's what we have is a system that's now built on debt, built on credit. The country doesn't make anything anymore. It's all debt. Everyone's in debt. The country's in debt. You're in debt. I'm in debt. Everybody's in debt. Collapse of the $1 trillion subprime loan market is an indication of where we're going. That the bubble is collapsing. The Fed put trillions of dollars into the system, a credit free-for-all, which was pumped into the real estate market, where they say, no money down, nothing for the first 2 years. And the value of houses keep going up. We'll give you a second mortgage, third mortgage. Keep leveraging, keep leveraging. And now the payments go up, nobody can make those payments. So you've seen all of the subprime loan mortgage lenders are going belly up. They're going to have to get bailed out probably, and this is a crisis for the bankers right now. The mortgage-backed security market is tanking. What's MBS, right? That's where they take 1,000 or 10,000 people with a subprime housing loan and package them into a bond. And then they sell that bond. And so when you're paying off your debt, you're actually paying some banker who bought a bond of your issue, okay? And that's how this has worked. So it's leveraged. Now, where is it leveraged? Into the hedge funds. That is $1.5 trillion in unregulated leveraged speculation. This is 100 to 1, sometimes 500 to 1. And if you want to see how this affects the market, having all these 8,000 to 10,000 hedge funds, 1.5 trillion unregulated, look at the blowout of the $6 billion Amaranth Fund in Connecticut. This fund blew out. Natural gas prices tanked from like $9 to $4.50. One hedge fund blew out. What do you think is going to happen when 5 or 10 blow out? Or 15 or 20 or 100 or 500 who were all playing this market and thinking it was going to keep going up and up and up? It's not going to be pretty. Now, what's leveraged on top of that? It gets worse. I'm sorry. The derivatives market, 400 to 600 trillion in parasitic leveraged side bets and debt. Leveraged 500, 600 to 1. You want to talk about the casino mentality of these parasitic bankers. This is what's going on. So you see how it is the house of cards is built up. The debt industrial complex, the credit complex, mortgage-backed securities on top of that, which go into hedge funds, which go into derivatives, and when the bottom falls out, you fall out. I fall out and the dollar falls out. U.S. dollar is doomed by inflation. They have now instituted the Plunge Protection Team, the PPT. The heads of the Treasury, the SEC, and Federal Reserve are working to prop up the market with hundreds of billions of dollars. You know, there was a report about Iraq that they just printed off billions in pallets and sent them on pallets to Iraq. Just lots of unregulated money. This is kind of a window into the way the Fed operates. They just run a line of money when they want to, and then they give it to third parties, select third parties, and put it into the system. So why hasn't the market collapsed yet? It is collapsing, and the PPT keeps running it up. And then the people that short sell the market have to cover their short bets, and that creates a false rally. And this has been going on for a while. The PPT has been activated. The Fed's M3 money supply, no longer public as of March 2006. Why? Because they're running a lot of money off those sheets. They're printing a lot of money right now. We're looking at a major hyperinflationary spiral. The yen carry trade. How has this system been financed? I talked about the Japanese influence. The yen carry trade, where Japanese interest rates were so low that people would basically take free money and then put it into these speculative bets, is coming to an end. Because as of early 2007, Japan is raising their interest rates. It's just a month or two ago. And both China and Japan will need to raise interest rates to curb inflation in their own country. You might have seen the Chinese stock market fell like 9% in one day. Yeah, it's out of control. It's been growing too fast. They need to raise interest rates. They will preserve themselves. And in doing so, they will damage the dollar. And it's just this teetering balance. And they're trying so hard to make it fall slowly. But you see, it's a delicate ballet. And there's so many countervailing interests. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. U.S. debt is Japan's biggest asset. So they have an interest in trying to control this thing and manage it as it collapses. China has trillions of dollars in U.S. reserves and says they're diversifying, as I mentioned. And what's happening? The International Monetary Fund and the BIS, Bank of International Settlements that I talked about, they're demanding further dollar depreciation. I mean, just recently the IMF said dollar needs to be devalued by a lot more. They're telling you you're just going to take your bank account. That's like coming in and robbing you. You get $100 in your bank account. They're just taking money out of your bank account. Your dollar is being depreciated. That means they are robbing you, literally taking your money away. Because now your $100 doesn't mean what it used to. Average citizen is sunk in debt. Real wages have not risen since 1970, and that's related to the destruction of the gold standard and the Bretton Woods Agreement that was done by George Shultz, Paul Volcker, and those bankers there. I'm going to talk about that. That enters the free-floating dollar, because Webster makes a good point. All currency is fiat, isn't it? All currency is fiat. This is real fiat, though. There's no backing to it now. It's unregulated. This means that the Fed can just run off money. There's no gold backing it up. They'll just run off a pallet of it, send it to Iraq. Credit card debt carried by the average American, over $8,000. These are old statistics. This is in 2002. I imagine it's far higher now. Total consumer credit over $2 trillion. Again, these are old statistics. Recent article, personal savings are at a 74-year low in this country. Negative rate of savings worse than at the height of the Great Depression. That's mainstream. Type in 74-year low personal savings. Okay, it'll come up, I promise. And that means that the gap between rich and poor is higher than the Gilded Age. I mean, the wealthy are getting wealthier. The middle class is being evaporated, coming into the working class, and the working class is being sold straight into poverty and homelessness. It's a drive down for the vast majority of this population. So let's see the versions of what's going on here. You see the CEO versus minimum wage chart here. 1965, the average CEO was earning 51 times the minimum wage. Today it's 821 times. Who's benefiting off the system? Did you benefit that much? Have your earnings gone up? No. Your earnings were stagnant since 1970. If you've been alive that long, I haven't. But look at CEO wages. You begin to see who's profiting off of this system. The rich keep getting richer. This is a chart from the Associated Press and the Census Bureau. Again, these are just the official numbers, but you can see that the top have increased their wealth by more than 75%, and the bottom by, they say 20%. I don't even believe that they've increased it by 20%. I think those numbers on the bottom are gerrymandered, but you see the gap is getting bigger. Where does this all lead? Where does this dollar collapse lead? It leads right to the North American Union. And you say, well, that seems kind of weird. Those things don't seem connected, do they? They do. They are connected. The North American Union is connected because of an individual named Robert Pastor. Look this guy up, okay? Start to study this guy. You want to see who the really evil people are. Right there, that face. He is calling for the Amero. This is not a conspiracy. Literally, openly in his book, saying, the Amero, the dollar's going to collapse. Okay? That's given. And the U.S. dollar, Canadian dollar, and Mexican peso will be merged into the Amero. So as the dollar comes down, where are they going to send you? They got to have a backup plan, right? You think the globalists and these elite are going to be caught sitting on their hands? No. They've got a plan. The Amero. So let me pull this up here. Is Pastor calling for a new 9/11? Yeah. He says, so I'm not advocating or encouraging or wanting a crisis. I'm only saying that in order to take important initiatives, sometimes one manner in which this occurs is when there's a crisis to which leaders need to respond. He goes on, he says, the 9/11 crisis made Canada and the U.S. redefine the protection of their borders. I guess make them more open, right? The debt crisis in Mexico has forced the government to adapt a new economic model. The crises oblige the governments to make difficult decisions. Crises create solutions. Problem, reaction, solution. Remember that Hegelian dialectic. He goes on, this is the most poignant part. He says, what I'm saying is that a crisis is an event which can force democratic governments to make difficult decisions, like those that will be required to create a North American community. That means destroying this country, taking the CFR's agenda, because Pastor works for the CFR. This was a CFR task force he's a part of. And he's saying, it's not that I want another 9/11 crisis, but having a crisis would force decisions that might not otherwise get made. Oh, he doesn't want it, but if it comes, we'll probably get that North American Union. This is akin to the PNAC Pearl Harbor comments. This is the new Pearl Harbor comments, saying, we're going to get you into North American Union. We don't want a crisis, but if one happens, we could get that North American Union pretty easy, couldn't we? Robert Pastor pushing for the SPP. It is a CFR agenda. Let me flesh this out a little bit. Judicial Watch recently got the documents from Northern Command, which said that NORTHCOM, which is the branch that controls the military in this country, if there's martial law, If we have a terror attack tomorrow and they declare martial law and they say, you need to get in the camps, get in the FEMA camps. It's Northcom running this country. And they're ready to take over. They are ready to suspend posse comitatus in this country. Northcom features prominently in a 2006 meeting that Judicial Watch gets the documents for. You have the top leaders from Northcom there, and they brag about merging the Mexican, Canadian, and military of the U.S. since before 9/11. They said, we've been doing this before 9/11. We're coordinating this, merging the militaries, merging the economies, and bragging about it. Freedom of Information Act, SPP. Who were the U.S. representatives at the SPP meeting? Very good indicator of who's controlling this country. Representatives from Lockheed Martin, Chevron, Wall Street Journal, NATO, the Undersecretary of Defense of this country, the Migration Policy Institute, to tell you what a good thing open borders are. Representatives from Lawrence Livermore, National Security Council, the chairman of the Defense Science Board, very powerful group right there, Peter Pace, head of the Joint Chiefs, James Woolsey of CIA, and Booz Allen Hamilton. Again, Google it. Booz Allen Hamilton. It's good stuff. And, of course, James Schlesinger, who was the former Energy and Defense Secretary. So some pretty heavy hitters at this meeting. Were you invited? I think mine got lost in the mail, huh, my invitation? Yeah. Now, who's the chairman of this meeting, right? George Shultz. Tarpley likes to talk about George Shultz. George Shultz, right? You see the influence of this individual who is a member of the CFR, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and Bohemian Grove. I mean, that's a four-hitter. That's like hitting 10 home runs in one game. And this is an individual who worked with Paul Volcker to dismantle the Bretton Woods system. I mean, you want to talk about a tool of the bankers, you know, a hand puppet. There is your man right there, destroying the gold standard under Nixon. And he is the chief handler of the neocons. This is the individual who handpicks Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rice, and he's the master of the Vulcans. So this is a little bit, you start going up that pyramid when you start looking at a man like George Shultz. Shultz, past, present, and future, well, he worked at Bechtel, which is privatizing third world assets, an extremely evil company. He was the head of that company. He's still on the board. Secretary of State under Reagan, chairman of the International Council of J.P. Morgan Chase. Well, this lets you know who he might be working for. Rockefeller Morgan network of finance oligarchs. He also was the co-chair of California's Economic Recovery Council with who? Warren Buffett. Now, who does Buffett work with? See that guy right there? That beautiful guy is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that decrepit old white man next to him is Jacob Rothschild. I can't believe I called him beautiful. I'd like that guy's ego needs something bigger, you know. This Austrian, like, Superman Nazi who says that all people need to be controlled. I don't mean to heap any compliments on him. But so you can begin to see where Shultz is tied. Rockefeller, Morgan, Rothschild, you see how these circles begin to move. Shultz, who founds him? Well, he works at something called the Hoover Institute. I talked about them a little bit before. Who funds the Hoover Institute? This major neocon warmongering think tank. Archer Daniels Midland, that's GM Foods. The Arco Foundation, that's the HARP system. I would go through this a little more. Boeing, Exxon, Ford Motors, and General Motors, those are the Nazi financiers, and they do a lot of the fake left foundation funding. So J.P. Morgan and Dean Witter for the Federal Reserve. So let's say 51 or 15. Really? Damn, boy. All right. So anyway, the SPP is the nexus of the coup faction, and obviously these people are trying to push a North American Union. There you see the NAFTA superhighway, what they are trying to push right now, and they're doing that with the Trans-Texas Corridor. Proposed 6 lanes with an adjacent railway system. They're talking about a pipeline underneath. Foreigners to build the NAFTA program, they're having the Spanish company Sintra build this. They're also buying up local newspapers in Texas and Oklahoma. They've bought up the Indiana highways. They bought up some of the Chicago highways, and they're doing this through eminent domain, saying that they can take your private property. The Supreme Court, ruled 5-4 that they can take your property. This was in a case in Connecticut, New London. Who did this? It was the court liberals. It was the people like Stevens and Kennedy and Souter, Bader Ginsburg and Breyer. So this is not Scalia who did it to you, although that is a pretty rapacious individual himself. And they're doing it so that they can build a $300 million research center for Pfizer. Here you see eminent domain, 21st century reality. And you see the chemtrails in the sky there, too. This is from a guy named David Dees. The open border SPP is a bipartisan issue. Clinton pushes NAFTA, no border guard, services to illegal immigrants, guest worker, total amnesty. Bush pushes CAFTA, blanket amnesty, guest worker, and a phony virtual fence, which is a $2 billion handout to Boeing for spy drones. And what are they doing now? Lobbying for the FTAA, trying to expand this thing to South America. The FTAA is stalled because of Chavez in Venezuela, Morales in Bolivia, and Correa in Ecuador, and Kirchner in Argentina, who are opposing this and trying to stop this from happening. Let me talk a little bit about the border fence. This is a massive $2 billion handout. They're talking about 1,800 towers, massive cameras. Now you say, good, They're building a fence. That's what we need. No, 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 no. This is a biometric fence. This is designed to keep you and Muslim Americans from escaping in a martial law scenario. They're not trying to stop the flow of illegal immigrants or drugs into this country. Do you think the corporations want to stop that cheap labor? Do you think the CIA, oh yeah, let's stop our own drug trade. Let's crash the stock market by cutting off heroin and opium. No, no, no. They're trying to keep you from leaving the country when they detonate a nuke in this country and then tell you, you better get to that FEMA camp. Now, I carry my passport on me. You never know what could happen. I'm not looking to leave. But we always better be prepared. And they want to stop you from being able to have the freedom to not just move around this country, but move around to other countries. And that's why they're doing this. It's biometric tracking. This is part of the SPP agenda. See, they know you want a border fence. They'll give you a border fence, a biometric $2 billion handout to Boeing. It's a fraud, and it will eliminate freedom in this country to move around. They're trying to turn us into Cuba, ladies and gentlemen. Who needs a false flag attack? Like I said, the SPP planners. The open border is a major boon to the drug dealers who pump this money into the stock market and through the banks. 75% of cocaine is now moving through the border in Mexico. This is also the majority of marijuana I put there. It's the swag, though. That's the stuff with seeds and stems, for those of you who know. Starting in 1989, the Colombian cartels have been using Mexico with the open border. They've been profiting off of it. This is a continuation of the Iran-Contra drug network connected to Bill Clinton and Mena, Arkansas's drug operations. He takes over in 1992. The Bushes and Clintons are drug-dealing business partners. And the people that are helping them run it, Las Zetas. These are the ex-military and special forces commandos trained at the U.S. School of the Americas in Georgia. So it's really nice. These CIA guys are protecting the drug dealers. You see, the network is pretty good. Look into the work of Celi Castillo. He talks a lot about this. The banks, the CIA, and Wall Street. The DEA and the CIA are enabling the cartels that work with the government. Like I said, Celi Castillo. Citibank was busted in the 1990s, funneling money for Raul Salinas, who was the brother of the Mexican president. Citibank, again, equals Rockefeller family. This is drug money moving through there. $500 to $600 billion laundered by the banks at enormous rates. The money is then funneled into the stock market. Coincidence? You know, Bush just last month is allowing 100 private Mexican trucking firms to move unlimited access across the border. I'm guaranteeing you some of those are going to have drugs on them. It's not a coincidence. This proposed NAFTA superhighway, they're talking about connecting it from Laredo, Texas to Duluth, Minnesota into Canada. It's really further than that. The 6-lane Trans-Texas corridor. That's Rick Perry selling you out. That is your federal government selling you out. Privately constructed by a foreign firm which is buying up local newspapers to stop dissent. They don't like what I'm saying. Taliban cut opium production by 95%. Why'd they invade Afghanistan? Well, part of it is for the natural gas and Trans-Caspian pipeline. Big part of why the stock market's going down. No opium anymore. You see, they pump that money in there, and that's what keeps the stock market propped up. So you see, opium production gets cut down. They put in the CIA warlords. Bumper crop year again. What happened? What changed? Well, the controllers changed, right? You see Plan Colombia and the FARC and the AUC. This, you know who this is? This is Richard Grasso, former head of the New York Stock Exchange, hugging one of the FARC rebel leaders in Colombia in 1999. Now, why is he going down with these people that control massive coca fields? Yeah, they're business partners. They work together. The money gets funneled through the banks, and he's a representative. Now, they weren't able to cut a deal with the FARC. So what happens? Plan Colombia, billions of dollars to eradicate FARC coca fields and put in AUC coca fields. These are the right-wing paramilitaries. And now the AUC is controlling the cocaine market and pumping that into the United States. So this is a great picture. This defines the way our economy works. It's drugs and just filthy ass, I'm sorry, I said a swear, filthy money. Drug networks, private and public. This relates to 9/11. The alleged hijackers trained at Huffman Aviation in Florida caught transporting heroin by the DEA. Atta makes visits to the Florida Keys, has constant access to cheap cocaine. This relates to the Iran-Contra drug running network, funneled by the banks at major fees, 20 to 30%, and also dates back to Skull and Bones, opium wars. Those are the original Anglo drug dealers. Drugs in prison, this is a 1-2 punch. Because I'm short on time, I can't talk about it, but there is a major prison industrial complex, 1 out of every 130 residents incarcerated. We put more people in jail in this country than China or any other country, creating the prison industrial complex, the privatization, forced prison labor, average 70 cents an hour, over 100,000 inmates in prison labor right now. This is financed by Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch that put out the $3 billion in prison construction bonds, one of the fastest growing industries in this country. This relates to the privatization of warfare, the rise of the green badgers. What's happening now is this entire system is being privatized. Titan and CACI were used for the torture at Abu Ghraib prison. Computer sciences and SAIC run large parts of the NSA through the Trailblazer and Groundbreaker program. I'm going to talk a little bit about that if I have time. Booz Allen Hamilton and SRI run the NRO programs right now. There are armies for hire in places like DynCorp, Halliburton, executive outcomes, Custer Battle, Aegis, and Wackenhut. Armies for hire, mercenary armies that are being used in Iraq right now and being used by other foreign countries. And of course, DynCorp and Halliburton hire lobbyists to not enforce existing human trafficking laws. So they have the sex slavery trade in Yugoslavia and Eastern Europe, which is dominated by these private military industrial contractors. Big profits. You can buy a slave on the markets of Europe for less than $5,000. It's a lot cheaper in some other countries, too. Places like Vietnam and Cambodia. The future economy, it's prisons. Prison industrial complex. Halliburton's building $385 million in emergency detention facilities in this country. I believe those were called death camps when the Nazis built them. They were called gulags when Stalin built them. They're called emergency detention facilities in this country. I guess it's just a semantics issue. The new programs is what they're calling it. Quote, new programs. Just Google it. New programs. Bush's new programs. FEMA detention facilities in most states. The U.S. Army has recently updated the civilian internment labor programs. They've reactivated those. This relates to programs back in the 80s, things called Rex 84, Operation Garden Plot, Operation Cable Splicing, where they planned for mass detentions. This was being run by Oliver North and the shadow government. One of those members was Dick Cheney. A dominant prison economy is the future under a martial law scenario. So let's talk about the police state. Militarizing. For martial law, you see, this is what they want. Police, M16s, having automatic machine guns in your face. Policeman isn't your friend anymore. Policeman's going to kill you and wears black boots and a ski mask and a helmet. Bipartisan progression of the police state. We need to understand both parties are working to control us via the police state. They have the Patriot Act on 9/11. We need to begin. 9/11 truthers, how was that thing printed up? I mean, this is a big document. Boy, it's like they had it ready, huh? Then, of course, you have the Domestic Security Enhancement Act, a.k.a. Patriot Act 2, which is passed after the stage capture of Saddam. Now, I say stage capture. They had him for weeks. This is admitted. They had him for weeks and released him and then passed this. Really tough to find articles about it, but they did it. National Intelligence Reorganization Act of 2004. This merges the intel agencies, begins to merge the databases, and creates a terror czar. John Negroponte, the great runner of the death squads in Honduras, who's since been replaced by Cheney Admiral Mike McConnell. You have the Real ID Act of 2005. That's the national ID card. 2006, the Democrats say, oh, we don't like the Patriot Act. We hate it. We just want to stop it. Patriot Act reauthorization and expansion. That's literally what it was. 2006, you have the Military Commissions Act saying that you could be an enemy combatant. You can be tortured, killed, murdered by your government. You have no rights. Furthermore, the legislation exempted Bush and his cronies from war crimes tribunals. Okay, they're exempting themselves because they're afraid they might get caught for this stuff, for the torture. You have the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2006. This federalizes the National Guard for a national emergency. Now, normally the state's governors would have to say, okay, we give you our National Guard for this emergency. No longer. In this bill, Bush has taken over the National Guard. The New York Times said, preparation for martial law, question mark? That was the title of the article. New York Times is admitting these are preparations for martial law. Of course, recently there was the Pelosi anti-terrorism bill of 2007, expanding on the fraudulent 9/11 Commission's police state recommendations with expanded terror databases. And of course, this means that your Bill of Rights is being eviscerated. Your ability to be a free citizen, your rights that you have as an individual who was born free, your government doesn't have any inherent rights over you. This is a fraud. This is the mind control. They put the chains inside your mind. The greatest chains are inside your mind. You enslave yourself by believing they have a right to do this. We should all be fighting against this. Any sane person should fight against this. The Bill of Rights is being eviscerated. They are developing mass databases like the Matrix system. Like they call it the Matrix system. This isn't a joke. They're laughing at you. They think this is funny. They think you're an idiot. They think you're stupid. They think they can take advantage of you. You're a mark. You're a loser. You're that person at the three-card Monte game thinking that the ace of spades is on the left. They're moving the ball. They think you're so stupid. And look at this. They have the Tangram system, which is the outgrowth of total information awareness, the DARPA system. They said, okay, well, we're going to shut down total information awareness. Bad press. It grew into Tangram. These are terabyte and petabyte database systems. That means they can hold tens of thousands of pages on every citizen, what you bought, what kind of toilet paper you use, what websites you go on, where you drive. They want to track and trace everything. They're getting the systems ready for that and doing a decent job at it, I might add. I say that you can disappear into the black site. This is federalizing the local and state National Guards under Joint Task Force Command. This isn't the preparation for a martial law scenario. People say, well, they're undermining the Geneva Convention. Kind of. It's just a more brazen version of what's going on. I mean, School of the Americas has been training torturers all over the world. We've been working with Nazis since World War II. I mean, this is not something new. Look into Gladio. I mean, they're used to killing people. They're used to torturing people. This is a more brazen version of it. They've set up the Gulag Archipelago in places like Poland, Romania, Ethiopia, Syria, Egypt, Israel, Thailand, South Carolina, Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. These are the ones we know about. These are the people who get put onto CIA rendition planes, tortured and murdered. And this is what your government's doing. They're setting up this Gulag archipelago. You're going to be part of it soon, if they have their way. I mean, if we don't stop them, remember those emergency detention facilities I talked about? You're next. Sound good? We better fight fast. I mean, time's running out, folks. I sometimes feel like people think that this thing's a joke. No, this is dead serious. They're playing for keeps this time. They're thinking of putting us in prison. I mean, when I go on stage and I do this, do you know how much the military intelligence people hate me for exposing what they're doing? It's not an ego issue. They hate you. I mean, they detest you. They think you're scum. They want to kill you. They want to torture you. But they're not just going to kill you. They're going to rip your fingernails off, and then they're going to kill you. The people are the absolute most degenerate thing humanity has ever produced, and they hate you. We better fight back. Fight like they have the gun to your head, because they do. All right. We need to talk about the main legal architects. The main people who were pushing this were three people: Timothy Flanagan, David Addington, and John Yoo. These are members of the Federalist Society. Now, what happened to Addington? He's now Dick Cheney's chief of staff. You see how the progression happens. You see how this is interrelated. Flanagan went back into the private business. John Yoo, I think, is teaching at Stanford. You know, they get the accolades. They get to go make $10,000 speeches now. Really nice stuff. This is part of the Carl Schmitt principle, the Reichstag principle. They have handpicked federal and Supreme Court police state reactionaries to flood the legal system, and it's the legal formula of Nazi crown jurist Carl Schmitt. Cheney is the unitary executive in war. He has Hitlerian powers, and they are creating a legal pretext for the police state, destroying Pasta Comitatus, and instituting martial law under Northcom. Write it down. Northcom, 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 Northcom. We need to learn who's controlling this country. Northcom. Two-sided PSYOP coin. Here you see on the left side, they're telling you, yeah, we torture. We'll beat you to death. We'll sodomize you. We'll rape you. We'll kill you. Then they have Nick Berg on the right. You notice any continuity between the color on the back of that wall and the color on the back of that wall? And you have these guys wearing these American sneakers here, wearing gold jewelry with white hands with their face all covered up. You see how he's wearing that prison jumpsuit there? You think there's some continuity that scandal on the left broke and then Nick Berg came out a few days later? I mean, I think that was an execution that they engineered at Abu Ghraib prison. It's the two-sided PSYOP coin. The Arabs are going to cut your head off, and we're just going to beat you to death. Playing both sides of that issue. I mean, part of the reason, I don't think they wanted all these photos to get out, but there's a psychological operations effect of it. We'll beat you to death. You're nothing. You're scum. We'll torture you. We'll come out and say we're doing it. The Nazis hid this stuff. They're going to come out and tell you they do it and laugh about it. And Rush Limbaugh thinks this is really funny. He's going on and saying, Guantanamo Bay, in these places, it's like a resort camp. Oh, it's really funny, huh? That stuff is funny when they sexually torture people, children as young as 11. Yeah, it's hilarious. You know, people say Don Imus did hate speech. You want to know what hate speech is? Laughing at the sexual torture of children who are 11 years old, that's hate speech. That's somebody who should be pulled off the radio, you know? All right, let's move on here because I don't want to take up too much time. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This is a grouping which comes together in June 2001. You want to understand why the U.S. is scared? Empire isn't what it used to be. Shanghai Cooperation Organization. See those countries? You're going to have to learn a lot more about them. Those are the people who, in a World War III scenario, they're coming your way. When the sides come together, there's going to be NATO versus those guys. So let's flesh them out a little. SCO plus CSTO plus CIS plus ALBA equals counterbalance to NATO. Well, who's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? This is Russia, China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan, controlling massive swaths of the world's liquefied natural gas and oil resources. Azerbaijan, Moldova, and Georgia are members of the CIS, which connects to the SCO, so you can think of them under the same grouping. Then you have the CSTO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization plus Armenia and Belarus. It gets bigger. You have SCO observer states, India, Pakistan, Iran, Venezuela, and Mongolia, all of whom are saying they want to join this group. The Minister of Pakistan said, we're very serious, we want to join. India is conducting war games and drills with Russia and China saying, we want to join. At the same time as Pakistan, traditionally their rival, Iran and Venezuela are joining up. These people want to get in. It's so popular right now that Nepal wants to get in. There's talk of Turkmenistan getting in. There's even talk of Afghanistan getting in. Isn't that amazing? And they are developing closer working relationships with Syria and Lebanon via China and Russia. And they are edging closer to relationships with members of the Gulf Cooperation Council in the Middle East. That's Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Furthermore, it gets bigger, folks. They have the ALBA coalition. I talked about those leftist governments in Latin America. That's Ecuador, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Bolivia, and Cuba, which are linking together. And all of these people are coming together to form a counterbalance to the Anglo-American dominant faction right now. Petrodollar, the spiraling death. You have the oil bourses which are set to open in Iran, but they've already opened in China and Russia. Nobody really talked about this. Yeesh. I've got to, I guess, rush through this. Major oil and gas producers are now accepting payments for oil in things other than dollars. They want to diversify their currencies. They're talking about a Russian-led natural gas OPEC, with some of these countries right now proposing to take over the natural gas market. This is a major threat to dollar hegemony. Of course, the U.S. is responding with AFRICOM and al-Qaeda bombings in Algeria and incursions into Somalia and Ethiopia, where a lot of the oil is right now. How does this lead? Well, they need to restrict the oil supply. You restrict the oil supply, you keep the price high, keep the demand for dollars high while people still want dollars. So people talk about peak oil. Not really. So these are, I think, more stage shortages. Now, it is true that some of the Saudi Arabian and Mexican and Kuwaiti fields are declining, but the peak oil alarmists ignore Russia, China, Norway, and all these other countries where oil is being discovered. It is true that there's a lag time between discovery and easy extraction. It is true that there's pipeline problems and issues of building this stuff. So, you know, I tend to take more of a middle ground on these issues, but hedge fund speculation is at least $25 of the oil price, and Iraq is now a net importer of gasoline and oil. That tells you something. That tells you that there's sort of an agenda to shut down the pipeline, so that's something we need to think about. Again, it's a race to control liquefied natural gas. I do mention these are some of the countries where I think we're going to see future battles. Look to Kazakhstan. That's one of the major prizes that they're going after. U.S., Euro, Saudi cartel of oil producers. I've listed companies there. You probably know them. Just check them out. Kazakhstan, a likely next target. The problem is that as they spike oil prices, this strengthens Russia and China and non-NATO nations who sell this stuff. So what I like to say is even if peak oil is staged, prices are going up. Maybe it is staged. I mean, there's a lot of arguments that this is just part of a Malthusian agenda, the population control. Even if it isn't, prices are going up, okay? Mercosur, this is related to the ALBA group. These are other Central and South American states which are getting together and saying we reject the FTAA. This is an agenda that is stalled right now. These are the chess pieces for World War III right now. You can see them lining up. I mean, I think we all ought to own a map or a globe or something like that in our house to understand how they've taken Ukraine now and made that a NATO protectorate right on Russia's doorstep, and similarly underneath done the same thing with Georgia there. Let's talk about this real quickly. NATO coups and conveniently timed deaths. The CIA has sponsored the color revolutions in Georgia in 2003 and Ukraine in 2004, 2005, immediately bringing them under NATO control right at the border of Russia. In 2005, there's a coup in Kyrgyzstan which allows a U.S. base to be put there in Central Asia. There's been the recent untimely deaths of the heads of state in Armenia and Turkmenistan, replaced by pro-West reformists who are talking about a NATO alliance. There's a push for an independent Kosovo to join NATO, and Russia wants to respond by allowing the breakaway regions in Georgia to come back under their control. So here you see independent Kosovo. Russia responds with South Ossetia and Abkhazia, which they're saying, well, we're just going to recognize them as autonomous if you want it. Back and forth, Russia versus U.S. You can see the pieces lining up on the chessboard. The grand chessboard, by the way. War games, a vision into the future. Well, Putin continues to warn of nuclear war. China is seeking a diplomatic solution in Iran because they have major oil and natural gas deals. General Levashov, the Russian general staff, has come out and said that there could be an April attack. I think that signals the Russians are really afraid. SCO war games since 2000 postulate a U.S. attack on Russia and China and a massive nuclear counterstrike. They're predicting war. They see it coming. Russia and China are actively arming Iran and Syria. That's their base. We have Israel. They have Iran and Syria. U.S. Northcom war games like Vigilant Shield, which was run in December last year, predicted nuclear warfare with Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Yeah, Northcom sees it going there. Northcom controls the country. They know where it's going. Chinese generals are threatening to nuke the U.S. openly, saying that if you interfere in Taiwan, we will nuke you. Russians and Chinese are working on new space weapons, new missiles, and what they call asymmetric warfare responses. That means you're probably going to die. There's hacking wars right now going on between the U.S. and China, not really being covered, but look it up. And China now controls $1 trillion, at least, in reserves in U.S. stock market. They control our fate. It's a delicate balance right now. I don't want to get them too angry, huh? Just want to point out something really important. Noble resolve. This is a drill coming up on April 23rd. I'm not saying this is going to happen. They are saying in the scenario, multiple terrorist scenarios, 10 kiloton nuke detonates in Virginia. They say they're going to be working with Department of Homeland Security, which is running other exercises that day, as you see at the bottom. It's coordinated with Virginia's Emergency Response Center. That's Mount Weather. Okay, this drill, it's called Noble Reserve 07. It features Joint Task Force Command and Northcom, of course, working with FEMA and the continuity of government, saying a problem begins in Europe, travels towards the U.S., mass warfare, we shut down the country, martial law, working with Department of Homeland Security and Mount Weather. April 23rd, let's look into this. Is this the launch point into war with Iran? Well, we need to remember, who ran the drills on 9/11? Northcom ran Vigilant Guardian and the hijackings and the AWACS drills. Stratcom ran the nuclear drills. FEMA ran the tripod drills. The NRO ran the plane crash drill. And Able Danger was managed by the DIA. So I start to say, well, these are the people who were behind 9/11. Space Warriors, Stratcom, Northcom, FEMA, DIA. There's your 9/11 coup faction. Now, how did they get their end game? WMD attack on American soil. Cheney said as much. You know, Philip Giraldi came out in 2005 in the August American Conservative and said, Cheney is going to nuke Iran in the wake of a new 9/11 on American soil. I predict they'll blame it on Hezbollah. Say Iranian terrorists did it. They could blame it on al-Qaeda. I think the myth of al-Qaeda has been shattered enough. They'll switch it to Hezbollah. They could blame it on an individual named Adam Gaddan, this fat white kid who they say joined up with al-Qaeda. And then they can say, see, it's white al-Qaeda. Your Christian neighbor is al-Qaeda. Your Jewish neighbor is al-Qaeda. That guy in the street, he could be al-Qaeda. It's not just Arabs anymore. It's not Persians. It's white al-Qaeda. Azam the American. He says, blood's going to run in your streets. We're going to get you. It's like the John Walker Lynn principle. They want to make you think that al-Qaeda could be a white thing, you know, and that's going to be their justification, because when they want to round you up in camps, they'll say, see, he was a white guy and he's part of this too. It's a good way to do it. It's a strong psychological operation. Remember, Stratcom just ran Global Storm 07 in March, simulating various nuclear world war scenarios. The U.S. Navy war games in late March in the Persian Gulf had mock aerial attacks on Iran and bombing missions. In March, they ran Juniper Cobra, where these drills were so big they had to be scaled back because they thought it was going to provoke war and they weren't ready for it yet. This dealt with the Arrow and Patriot missile systems right on Iran's doorstep. Some big ones that are coming up soon, hinting of a vast conflict. Well, there was the Full Eagle exercise in March, 29,000 U.S. soldiers, lots of different aircraft carriers with South Korea. This war game was so realistic that the North Koreans pulled out of this nuclear deal that they were cutting. Everybody said, why'd the talks collapse? This is why the talks collapsed. These are real. This is not a game. This is real troops moving around, real preparations for war, and other countries know it. Operation Valiant Shield. Keep an eye out for this one. Late June, early July, 3 carrier strike groups, 28 ships, 280 warplanes, 22,000 troops, largest Pacific drill ever in Guam. That's right on China's doorstep. When Rumsfeld talks, China's the big threat. We need to get China. Guam is a place that they could do that. There's a Shanghai Cooperation Organization that's running a drill August 9th to 17th in 2007, Peace Mission 2007. They use the Orwellian language too. There's about 4,000 troops, 500 different types of weapon systems, biggest drill for the SCO. Ardent Sentry Northern Edge, this one has me freaked out. First 2 weeks of May, they have, quote, realistic terrorist scenarios in the U.S. and Canada run by Northcom and 75 federal agencies, and the top-off 07 drill in October 2007, large-scale terror and WMD attacks. Russia and China are the final endgame targets. Rumsfeld said so. Stratcom says so. They're building a NATO missile defense system on Romania and Poland as a warning to Russia, as a provocation toward World War III. You have the article from the CFR, Lieber and Press, suggesting a successful first strike on Russia. The neoliberals are pushing for a direct confrontation, as are the neocons in many ways. Putin is saying U.S. relations are worse than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have the Ivashov warnings. I really only got a couple minutes. I had so much more I wanted to get to. Again, this is all related to the death of the dollar, and they're trying to create a cashless society control grid in the aftermath of this. Here you see people scanning with their finger. That's the future. Electronic currency. After the Amera, they want to push you into it. The head of Visa says by 2012, the dollar's going to be gone. Everybody's going to pay with that little finger scan, eye scan. This is where it's going. Credit cards are a sort of prognosticator of that. Pay with your Vera chip, RFID. That's RFID dust there. I mean, you can't even see that stuff. It's being embedded into products. You see somebody getting the Vera chip there. You see somebody with the RFID passports putting it into products there. It's in Philadelphia cream cheese. They put it onto the Walmart trucks. Total information awareness. They're expanding the databases. They have the Science Industrial Complex, DARPA, the NSF, National Institutes of Health, the RAND Corporation, Information Exploitation Office, and Defense Science Board working to create this global information grid, as they call it. I don't even know how I'm going to finish this. I had so much I wanted to talk about. This is so important to talk about the way they're using technology against us. This is the head of DARPA, a man named Tony Tether. We want to talk about who could have helped out with something like 9/11. Look into a guy like that. I'll show you his picture again. Tony Tether, DARPA. The future of human warfare, what I fear is that we're seeing nanotechnology, robotics and artificial intelligence, genetic engineering and cognitive science, and what they're trying to do is merge these things together. This is the way they control humanity. They're taking the next generation of technology and trying to do what they call the convergence. engineering at the atomic level, artificial intelligence, robotic warfare, engineering your food, engineering your plants, engineering animals, chimeras, engineering your children, gene therapy, and studying you, the mass psychology, what Tavistock Institute does, and studying how they can manipulate your brain with drugs and different other types of sort of chemical warfare against you and your thought control. Problems with GNRC, this could create an apocalypse. Bill Joy wrote about this and why the future doesn't need us. I guess if I really have 2 minutes, I'll just have to rush through it. Nano self-replication could get really out of control. The problem with all these weapon systems, this is bigger than the globalists. This is bigger than the global elite. You know, all these things could lead to an apocalypse. There was a case at UT right here. Somebody dropped a beaker full of avian flu that was genetically modified. That could have caused the apocalypse right there. That could have killed all of us. There was a near-nuclear detonation last year in Texas with a nuclear device when they were trying to break it down. I mean, it could happen accidentally. They don't even have to engineer it, you know? And the direction is leading toward more control and less personal freedom. This is the panopticon concept. They want you to think you're being watched. Glass cell, the warden is in the middle, and the lights are off. They make you think you're being watched all the time. In many ways, you are. Not always, and that's the fear that they induce in you. They're trying to create the global information grid. This is Boeing, this is DARPA, this is the revolution in military affairs, where they say, since 1993, they've been saying, we want to microchip you, we want brain implants, link the satellites, automated warfare. This is from Boeing's own website. Okay, automated warfare. This is how they see you, part of a global information grid. They're talking about brain implants, DARPA brain-machine interface and cyberkinetics, linking you to what they call literally, quote, hive mind system. Type it in on Google. They're merging nanotechnology, biotechnology, and IT, engineering the future of everything. You see them coming together. You see the chips in that person's brain. That's actually from one of their documents. Artificial intelligence, linking the spy network together. They're trying to link all the cameras together, street cameras, cameras here, cameras everywhere, and link them together in an AI system so that everything you do is tracked, traced, and recorded, for that matter, like TiVo. They call it the Pentagon's TiVo. Pentagon wants TiVo for themselves. You have the Echelon Trailblazer Groundbreaker Network. This was an attempt to merge together the NRO, NSA, and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. This is a real another up-and-comer doing a lot of secret space weapons research. Tried to merge them together with the Echelon program and then the Trailblazer Groundbreaker. It didn't really work from what I've read, but it's a sign of where they're trying to go, merging everything together. Genetic engineering, this is elite-directed revolution. They are trying to tell you what your children are going to look like, and also what your food is going to be. That's how they poison you. Future soldiers, live and robotic exoskeletons. They want the soldiers on drugs, smart cloth, laser weapons, new helmets. This is not a scene from the video game Halo. That's from DARPA's website on the right there. UAVs and robot tanks, they want to eliminate the human element of warfare, make it so that some general sitting